Charmed, I'm sure.
Mutual, I'm sure.
Mutual, I'm sure. Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Emma.
And I'm Luke.
And this week we are doing the second half of chapter 11.
12.
Chapter 12.
Charms.
Charms. So this week we're going to pick up where we left off and talk about sort of Fitz and how he's getting along in town and his servant role.
Yeah. The last we left off, he was at Croy's, the weapon dealer, to pick up a sword. So he picks out a knife and a blade and keeps up a constant stream of observations at how Buckkeep had changed since I was last there. It was not hard to get him gossiping and then to turn his tongue to omens and portents and those who dealt in them. I did not have to mention Jinna by name to hear of her. So eventually, as soon as he finds his blade, he heads off to Jinna's shop, which she has located through gossip at Croy's, the weapons dealer, and finds her place all right.
He also realizes as he's on his way to Jinna's, as he's walking towards her shop, that it's going to be a little bit hard to explain why he is where he is. Yeah. And he's trying to make sure that he's going over everything he's ever told her because he doesn't want her to be able to, number one, piece together who he truly is, but maybe more importantly, be able to pick out that he's lying.
Right, and especially with his newly modified life history that he just explained to Lord Golden, what he was going to go with. Like, does that jibe with what he had told her before?
Exactly. So it's sort of hard, and he's a little bit nervous and doesn't know what to expect, but he also knows he needs Jinna's help, and honestly, it's just a bridge he's going to have to cross when he gets to.
If something did not make sense to her, well, she would just have to believe me a liar. I frowned at how much that disturbed me. So he does like her.
Yes.
He's sad about making her believe that he is a liar because he's lying about his past.
I mean, Fitz is so funny about that. He's always like, oh, I don't want people to think that I lie, but then does lie all the time, especially to people he cares about. And I mean, they are like, for their protection. Yeah. It's not like he's not just like saying the sky's red because he feels like it. They are necessary lies, but he is a liar. And so it's really interesting that he like doesn't want people to think of him that way, but that doesn't make him open up to anybody anymore, you know? But no, he is going to Jinna's shop, and as he finds it, he realizes there's a lot of charms hung up, and he says that he doesn't really get a vibe from any of them, so none of them must be against predators, which is lucky for him. But also he doesn't know that any of them are actually doing much.
Right. He makes a guess that they're for welcome. And so he knocks on the door, and half of it opens up, and Jinna herself greeted him. "Badgerlock," she exclaimed, peering at me, and it was pleasant that neither my warrior's tale nor my new clothes had kept her from knowing me. She instantly swung the lower door open. "Come in. Welcome to Buckkeep Town. Will you let me repay the debt of hospitality I owe you? Do come in." And he gets a genuine warm welcome.
And there's little in life so reassuring as a genuine welcome.
Yes.
I just wanted to quick point out, I feel as though that little thought of, wow, my warrior's tale and new outfit didn't change how the fact that she knew me is kind of really sad because nobody recognizes him.
Yeah.
And here's Jinna, who recognizes Tom, but she also knew Tom. And nobody else knows who Tom is. He's not Fitz. And I think it really just, again, highlights how different things are and how poorly Fitz is taking it in a way. Like he is, I'm not phrasing this well because that makes it seem more extreme. His feelings are hurt. He's not acknowledging that his feelings are hurt at what is going on, but very clearly through the text and all the like things that have been happening to him and how he's been reacting, I think his feelings are hurt that people don't recognize him. Like I think it is a hit to his self-esteem that he's so forgettable, even though that's not at all what it is. He is in a disguise.
And I think it's also doubled up because Buckkeep is also unrecognizable to him a bit. There's so many things that have changed. Like in the tailor shop, which used to be Molly's place, he's trying to sit there because he's not being asked any questions. He can try to imagine that it still smells like beeswax, or maybe his hope is just deceiving him that way. It's so many things have changed that he doesn't recognize much and nobody recognizes him. It kind of reflects that conversation he had with the fool of, this is no longer my home, but it should be.
Yeah. I think this is one of those chapters that you sort of have to read between the lines to get more out of it, because Fitz is that unreliable narrator and he doesn't think about his feelings too in depth, especially at this point in time. And I think it's just very clear that knee-jerk reaction to being recognized and then genuinely warmly welcomed is so touching to him in this moment.
Yeah.
Because of what he's just gone through. He just had Kettricken not recognize him at all. And that has to hurt. And I think it's not just about Kettricken, but I think that's a big, thing to him of how he's feeling in this moment.
Right.
And it's really hard to be that way. And it just makes me feel sad for him because he clearly just wants to belong. He just wants to be loved and accepted. And he's not really setting himself up for winning in that sort of aspect. But it's very clear that that's what he's craving. That's what he wants. And so it is so refreshing to, in a way, get that from somebody that he finds to be a friend.
Yeah. He gets pulled into the cool house and realizes that he interrupted her meal. And she's like, no, don't worry about that. Sit down, share with me. Like fully on warm welcome. Like, hey, share my food.
Some Southern hospitality acting right here. This is like, oh, you caught me at dinner, but I'll pull you up a plate. It's fine. Get on in here. It is. She's not bothered. Yeah. She's so happy to see him. Go ahead, have some extra helpings.
Now, tell me what brings you to Buckkeep. She must have noticed that I wore servant's garb, but left it to me to tell her what it meant. I liked that. I've taken a position at Buckkeep as a manservant to Lord Golden. Even knowing it was false, it was still hard to say those words. I had never realized what a proud fellow I was until I had to masquerade as the fool's servant. When I left home, I told Hap to join me when he could. At that time, I was not sure of my plans. I think that when he gets to Buckkeep Town, he may seek you out. May I leave word for him with you, so you can send him on to me? I braced myself for all the inevitable questions. Why had I suddenly taken this employment? Why hadn't I simply brought Hap with me? How did I know Lord Golden? Instead, her eyes brightened as she exclaimed, with great pleasure. But what I propose is simpler. When Hap arrives, I'll keep him here and send word up to the keep. There's a little room in the back he can use. It was my nephew's before he grew up and married away. Let the boy have a day or so in Buckkeep Town. He seemed to enjoy it so at Springfest, and your new duties will probably not allow you time to show him about yourself. I know he would love that. My hope is that here in Buckkeep I'll be able to earn the coin to purchase him a good apprenticeship. So it's very easy to speak with Jinna, and she's very welcoming and saying pretty much what he was hoping. Just like, hey, he can stay with me for a day or two.
Fitz is always so worried that every interaction is somebody fishing to find out what he's hiding.
Or going to cost him something.
Yes, he is so badly just sort of trained in a way to expect that conversations mean somebody wants something from you. They're trying to get something out of you. They want everything. And then when he has a normal conversation with Jinna, he's so shocked. And it's kind of crazy because I don't really know how often in my life I'm talking to somebody that I like, that is a friend, where I'm like, oh no, they're going to ask so many questions about this. And then surprised that they don't. Like, it's always me giving way too much information, but but when I do just say, oh yeah, I went to town the other day, I don't have them going, well, why'd you go to town? Why didn't you go here? Why didn't you do? They're just like, oh, that's interesting. Because that's how people talk.
Oh, you went for groceries? Why didn't you pick those up before?
Yeah.
Why'd you have to go yesterday?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you have done that before you needed them? That's not how people talk. People don't grill you for answers for every little detail of your life. But
he's afraid of it.
He is afraid of it. And so I like his friendship with Jinna, if only because it gives him a regular person to talk to.
Right.
Because let's be real, Chade is that way, but that's more because Chade is...
The Fool is that way, too.
Well, okay, true, fair. Fitz has a weird group of friends at the moment as it stands who are asking him all those questions, but they're only doing that because he's so secretive all the time. And if they don't ask him while they have him, they're not going to get to know.
I don't know. From when he was a child, he was drilled into reciting his days.
Right.
By Beric, by Chade, but like...
Beric didn't make him do that.
Oh, that's true. But Beric did make him like remember a bunch of stuff, and Chade kind of continued that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess mostly Chade, and then he had to report to the king, to Verity, to the Fool, to Chade, to everybody.
To be fair, that's how he's been trained to associate conversations, I guess, is that people are gonna grill him for
talk everything. For hours and say everything you've done for the past 3 months, please.
Leave out no details.
Why did you do it?
Why'd you make that choice? Were there any other choices available?
How did everyone react?
And then he gets to a regular person who's just like, okay, anyway. And he's like, what? I'm not done reporting.
And now we get to meet some people's favorite characters. I don't care much either way, but Fennel comes into the story.
Yes, the cat.
I've seen a lot of discourse that like Fennel's great, and I'm just like, it's a cat.
Yeah, Luke's not a big cat person. I like Fennel. I think Fennel's fun. I like Fennel in the same way I like Night Eyes. I think they're both opposite sides of the same coin. Yeah. They're both just like kind of sassy, grumpy pet companions.
Coming up, a large tawny cat announced this to me at the same moment that he effortlessly elevated onto my lap. I stared at him in surprise. Never had an animal spoken so clearly to me via the wit, save for my own bond animals, nor had I ever been so completely ignored by an animal that had just spoken mind to mind with me. The cat stood, hind legs on my lap, front paws on the table, and surveyed the food. A plumy tail waved before my face. Fennel, shame on you. Stop that. Come here. Jinna leaned across the table to scoop the cat from my lap. She picked up the conversation as she did so. Yes, Haps told me of his ambitions, and it's a fine thing to see a young man with dreams and hopes. He's a good boy, I fervently agreed with her, and he deserves a good chance at making something of himself. I'd do anything for him. Fennel now stood on Jinna's lap and stared at me across the table. She likes me better than you. He stole a piece of fish from the edge of her plate. Do all cats speak so rudely to strangers? I rebuked him. He leaned back to bump his head possessively against Jinna's chest. His yellow-eyed stare was daunting. All cats talk however they want, to whomever they want, but only a rude human speaks out of turn. Be quiet. I told you, she likes me better than you. He twisted his head to look up at Jinna's face. More fish?
Yeah, I love Fennel. I think that's so fun.
Ah, so arrogant.
Yes. It's like a mini dragon.
That's exactly what they reminded me of. And I think that's pretty much what Robin Hobb writes the dragons as, is just like large cats.
Yeah. I think, if anything, cats are a little bit more arrogant. Because at least
for their size, the dragons can back it up a bit.
Well, that, but also sometimes dragons try to understand, if that makes it they vaguely they admit that they understand human thought processes. They're like, oh yeah, you humans are so annoying with that. Whereas cats are more just like, you should know better. That's not the cat way. So if anything, cats are worse. But this is all happening in tandem with the conversation between Jinna and Fitz. So Fitz has just got done saying that he'd do anything for Hap. Mm-hmm. And then Jinna replies with
plain.
Yeah, that's plain. Like, that's plain to see. I totally get that. And then Fitz is like, what? Because he's had a secondary conversation silently with the cat about cats speaking.
And then he sees that Jinna feeds Fennel a little bit of fish, and he's like, I know that Jinna isn't witted. So why is this cat talking like he is witted? Why is she feeding him a little bit of fish
After he asks
after
for
he
fish.
asks for it? And do all cats speak like this? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, he's really confused. And to be fair, so am I, as somebody who would love to know all the rules of the magic system.
Fitz admits that he knows little of cats because Bjork never kept them in the stables. We'd had rat dogs to keep the vermin down. So, yeah, this is the first cat that we meet.
Yeah. So it could be true that cats can all speak to humans if they wanted to. But it could also just be this cat thinking that he does it, so everybody else does too.
It's been a long time since I first read these books, but I remember first reading them and thinking, is this a magic cat? Because as growing up, Aragon was just coming out, and the witch character Angela has a cat in there that speaks to kind of everybody.
Yeah.
Like there's like these magic cat tropes. So I was like, is Fennel like this witch's cat that's more magical than he seems? Or is it just all cats? And then, later in these books, we get more cats. But
yeah. Well, I think especially because for the rest of this chapter with Jinna is responding to the cat. Whatever the cat is saying, Jinna responds to, basically. Like, whenever it wants to be picked up or put down or given more fish or given more food, Jinna's like absentmindedly responding to that by giving the cat more fish or putting the cat down or picking it up, whatever. And so I find that to be really interesting. And I wonder if that's just sort of like, it's been talked about in the books before that wit is something that everyone has. It's not like skill where some people have it, some people don't. Everybody has a very small amount of wit in them.
Yeah.
It's the thing that makes parents know that their kid is the one crying. Like, that's wit in a way. And so
at least what Tom Badgerlock thinks.
Yeah, that's how Tom
it works.
Yeah, Tom has described it to the reader. And so I think in this moment, it's really interesting to think about maybe Jinna being a lot like Kettrikin, where whenever Kettrikin's around Night Eyes, she also sort of picks up on subconsciously on what Night Eyes is saying and can respond to that. And so I'm wondering if it's just like she is more open to the wit, but is not a witted person.
Or maybe even just cats are more able to, since they can speak kind of with all humans, they have more of that human thought process and can pass along those desires or wants a little bit more easily because, as we know, animals have their own kind of way of thinking and they're not very humanized, but cats seem to just communicate.
And honestly, if I'm thinking about it, like animal-wise, it feels like cats are the most domesticated of creatures.
Yeah, they domesticated themselves, basically.
Yeah, and like so it would make sense to me that cats have a more human way of thinking comparatively to any other animal.
Right.
And so that being part of the easier bridge between them and other people is that they have that more human-like understanding of life.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that's like a fun little cool detail to think about as we go on and see more cats.
Jinna misinterpreted Tom's silence here and assumes it's his preoccupation of thinking about Hap. It must be hard to leave your home and being your own master to come to town and serve, no matter how fine a man Lord Golden may be. I hope he's as open-handed at paying you as he is when he comes down to Buckkeep Town to trade. I forced a smile to my face. You know of Lord Golden, then? By coincidence, he was right here in this very room just last month. He wanted a charm to keep moths from his wardrobe. I told him I had never made such a thing before, but that I could attempt one. So gracious he was for such a noble man. He paid me for it, just on my word that I would make one. And then he insisted on looking at every charm I had in my shop, and bought no less than 6 of them. 6! One for sweet dreams, one for light spirits, another to attract birds. Oh, and he seemed quite entranced with that one, almost as if he were a bird himself. But when I asked to see his hands to tune the charms to him, he told me they were all intended as gifts. I told him he might send each recipient to me to have the charms tuned if they wished, but as yet none of them have come. Still, they will work well enough, as I built them. I do like to tune the charms, though, It's all the difference between a charm built by rote and one created by a master. And I do regard myself as a master. Thank you very much.
So
this is very interesting for a couple reasons. One, I know that the Fool doesn't gift these.
No.
In the future, he tinkers with them on his own and tries to see what makes them work. Yeah. And he creates kind of like a human repellent in his room that Fitz stumbles upon in the next couple chapters. And it's like makes him very weird. And then they have a conversation where the Fool's like, remember, I'm not a human.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts and crackpot theories, and I should say tinfoil theories, about all of this. Partially, I'm wondering if one of Beloved's parents was a hedge witch.
Maybe.
Either his mother or one of his dads. I mean, definitely could be something. I don't know, because Jinna does explain that it's sort of something you're either born with or you're not. And a lot of times it does pass down through families, like this magic thing. And I don't know, the fact that he can see the magic in a way, not see it, but understand it on some capacity more so than Fitz. When Fitz looks at it, he feels the magic effects, but he looks at them as just sticks and stones, right? He doesn't see anything. And the fact that Beloved can look at it and tinker with it enough to make it something else implies that he is seeing more.
Right.
Which is sort of what he does with wood carving, right? Like he hears the wood and what it wants to be. And Jinna later, I'm sort of jumping ahead, explains that these objects whisper to her in what they are and what they mean. And so I'm wondering if it's like same vein, if maybe...
Although they don't really like talk to Fool, he just touches them with his skill hands.
Yes,
kind of,
also that. So maybe it is just the skill that's helping. Yeah. But then that implies that the witch magic is somehow connected to skill.
Circle of magic, maybe.
Yeah. You know? So I don't know.
But also, he's attracted to the bird one, which is very interesting.
Yes, because the final trilogy, Motley, is like a bird that attaches itself to Beloved, even though Beloved is not witted and cannot fully form the bond. But Motley is bonded to Beloved. That is a thing that Fitz talks about in the final trilogy, where like Motley acts as though he has a wit partner, even though Beloved can't finish.
Just weird bird things with the Fool.
I know. And he is sort of bird-like in a lot of descriptors, so... Yeah.
And then the rooster feathers are another connection. Not really anything to do with birds, but it's just another bird thing. And then the rooster cock pheasant or something is his golden pheasant?
Yeah, I think of this as it's a golden pheasant, right?
Yeah.
And it just means the boy pheasant is I think.
Yeah.
Is his sigil. But this is crazy. This is another tinfoil hat. But what if
golden cock pheasant is the way it's described. So it's just a golden male pheasant.
Yes. But my crazy theory is, what if Beloved, being a pure white or whatever, is in some way a descendant of dragons? And
that's crazy.
No, hear me out. Whites are like somehow the evolutionary descendant of dragons, and then like birds are also like, hear me out. Think about
I'm hearing
think about a T-Rex and a chicken. That's what chickens are like. Evolutionarily similar in some weird way. I don't know. I'm not a dinosaur scientist, but like
roll out the tinfoil for this one. Everyone.
Wrap it a couple times around and hear me out. Birds are related to dragons, and in the middle of those two
are the whites. Oh, interesting.
I don't know how evolution works. But I feel as though it could be that way. So all I'm saying, that's why he feels such an affinity.
All right. Well, Jinna was sought out by Lord Golden after the visit at Tom Badgerlock's cabin. Jinna doesn't know that, of course, but the fool was kind of entranced by the little charm that he got as well, and made his way there to see who had befriended Fitz.
Right. And I mean, interestingly, I think it's kind of cute that Beloved, even as a character of this Lord Golden who is so haughty and gaudy and rude to serving people and just like so holier than thou, he can't help but go and help the working class and be kind to them.
Super well for
he's like, oh, I'm such a jerk to all these people because I'm supposed to be like this rich jerk, but then also makes it worth it to all the people that encounter him because he does give them a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's like funny to me that I think that's a core Beloved trait, that Beloved does just ultimately want to help people, especially people that are worse off than they are. And so I think that in that way, Beloved just like wants to help and can't help it even when they're playing a character that's so far away from themselves in that way.
Yeah. Well, Fitz feels better at ease and tells Jinna so, like, hey, I'm so glad that Hap has a place to come to and stay. He doesn't need a lot of help or care anymore, but I'm always worried for him. That's just part of being a father, she assured me, or a friend. I'm not above foolish worries myself, even when they're none of my business. She gave me a frankly speculative look that evaporated all the ease in my body. I'm going to speak plainly, she warned me. Please, I invited her, but every bone in my body wished she would not. You're witted, she said. It was not an accusation. It was more as if she commented on a disfiguring disease. I travel quite a bit in my trade, and more perhaps than you have in the last few years. And she explains that the mood against witted folk are even worse. You know, it's really bad that there's a town in Pharaoh that they displayed body parts of witted people that they had captured and killed.
Yeah. Things are getting horrible.
Yeah, each piece in a separate cage to prevent them from coming back to life. I kept my face still, but I felt as if ice were creeping up my spine. Prince dutiful, stolen or run away, but in either case vulnerable. Outside the protective walls of Buckkeep, where people were capable of such monstrosities, the young prince was at risk. I'm a hedgewitch, Jinna said softly. I know what it is to be born with magic already inside you. It's not something you can change even if you want to. More, I know what it's like to have a sister who was born empty of it. She seems so free to me sometimes. She could look at a charm my father had made, and to her it was just sticks and beads. It never whispered and nagged at her. The hours I spent beside my father learning his skills were hours she spent with my mother in the kitchen. When we were growing up, the envy went both ways. But we were a family, and we could be taught tolerance of our differences. She smiled at her memories and then shook her head, and her face grew graver. Out in the wide world, it's different. Folk may not threaten to tear me apart or burn me, but I've seen hatred and jealousy in more than one set of eyes. Folk think either that it isn't fair that I've got something they can never have, or they fear that somehow I'll use what I've got to hurt them. They never stop to think that they've got talents of their own that I'll never master. They might be rude to me, jostle me out in the street, or try to squeeze me out of my market space, but they won't kill me. You don't have that comfort. The smallest slip could be your death, and if someone provokes your temper, well, you become a different man altogether. I confess it's been bothering me since the last time I saw you. So, well, to put my own mind at rest, I made you something. I swallowed. Oh, thank you. I could not even find the courage to ask what she had made me. Sweat was leaking down my spine despite the coolness of the dim room. She had not intended to threaten me, but her words reminded me how vulnerable I was to her. My assassin's training went deep, I discovered. Kill her, suggested that part of me. She knows your secret, and that makes her a threat. Kill her. I folded my hands on the table.
I just want to point out that is absolutely not his assassin's training speaking there. That is just his fear.
I think it is, because I think that's what Chade would have drilled into him. Like, hey,
if somebody knows too much, kill him.
Not necessarily that, but like eliminate their knowledge. Like we have to you can't have that running around. It's a danger to the kingdom, you know?
I guess I don't know. I get the vibe that this is more of his own fear and trauma speaking through him of like there's the only way to win is death.
I think it's a bit of that too, for
so
sure.
I think it's not necessarily his old assassin's training rearing its head. I think it's the fear and trauma he has lived through and the near-death experiences that have taught him that to live, he has to eliminate the threat of not living. And in that case, it feels like it's Jinna because she knows the secret. Even though she just had this whole heartfelt story, which I do just want to say, like, oh, people are sometimes jealous. They don't realize they have talents I'll never have. I feel like being able to do magic and baking a really nice loaf of bread, very different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Like, I'll never be a master swordsman, but I think that they're allowed to be jealous if I'm allowed to levitate. You know what I mean? Like, they're not the same.
I can make a charm that entrances you to like me. But man, I'll never be able to dunk a basketball.
Yeah, like, one of these things is not like the other. It just, I don't know. Like, whenever I read that, I'm like, okay, well.
It's a good sentiment.
Yes, it's a good sentiment overall that everybody has different
Explains
strengths.
the point.
Yes. However, in this moment, it a little bit falls flat. Mostly because she's like, yeah, I can do literal magic that defies logic and bends reality to my whim. But they could maybe make a good sword or a loaf of bread, and I'll never know how to do that. You could absolutely learn that realistically.
Not with her eyes, okay?
Oh, yeah, her eyes are going now, so. Oh.
So she thinks that he must think her strange for interfering in his life when she's only met him a couple times. She seemed embarrassed yet determined to give him the gift. And Fitz is like, well, I think you're kind. Her rising had displaced Fennel. He sat on the floor, wrapping his tail around his feet, and glared up at me. There goes the lap. All your fault. She had taken a box from the cupboard. She brought it back to the table and opened it. Inside, she pulls out a string of beads that turns into a necklace. What does it do? I asked. She laughed lightly. Very little, I'm afraid. I cannot make you seem unwitted, nor can I make you invulnerable to attack. I cannot even give you something that will help you master your temper. I tried to make something that would warn you of ill feelings toward you, but it became so bulky and large it was more like a war harness than a charm. You will forgive my saying that my first impression of you was that you were a rather forbidding fellow. It took me a while to warm to you, and if Hap had not spoken so well of you, I would not have given you a moment of my time. I would have thought you a dangerous man. So did many appraise you as they passed us in the market that day, and so, bluntly, did you later show yourself to be. A dangerous man, but not a wicked one, if you will excuse my judging you. Yet the set of your face, by habit, shows folk that darker aspect of yourself. And now with a blade at your hip and your hair in a warrior's tail, well, it does not give you a friendly demeanor. And it is easiest to hate a man whom you first fear. So she explains that this is a variation of an old lover's charm, but this is not to attract lovers, but to make people well disposed towards you if it works as I hope it will. Sometimes variations lack strength. And this is something that is very apparent if, like you were saying before, you kind of read between the lines. People don't like him on first glance, usually, or are wary of him. Like the group of women glancing back at him multiple times warily. And he's just a scary fellow walking alone behind a group of women, and they're going to be like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, like on the best day, a big bulky man walking behind a group of women is a little bit off-putting.
If he was a smooth-faced youth, they'd be like, okay.
Like, yeah, but like he's like this hard warrior, like
with a scar on his face.
He didn't have a weapon when he was behind them, but like, I get it. Like,
yeah.
But it's just, I think,
explaining that people in the market thought he was foreboding.
Yes, which I think is really important because that's something that I don't think as readers you get to realize until
not from his perspective.
Yeah, until this moment. And we know that people in the market were afraid of him and he was aware of it during the confrontation.
Yeah.
However, it felt like from his point of view when you're reading it, they were just worried because of the confrontation. Like there was no preconceived, oh, this guy's dangerous. There was sort of a...
Or this could turn bad. It was just a...
And so I think it's really interesting to get Jinna's perspective. And I think if you were to read this series and go from the last Fitz trilogy straight into this Fitz trilogy and skip the Rainwilds, I think it would be maybe more obvious the difference between Fitz as a youth and now, because when he was younger, this wasn't a problem, right? And I think it also comes from his attitude towards people. There is that trauma that's forcing him to be the scariest one in the room, because if he scares them first, they won't attack him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he does that.
Like his reaction to be like being a servant.
Yes.
It's like, I need to be scary and have a reputation so people don't bother me.
Yes. And that fully, absolutely, in my mind, comes from what he has lived through, right? He wants that protection. He does not want to have to fight other people off, but he realizes that the strongest person wins sometimes even before the battle begins. And so if he can head off the fight entirely because he's too scary to approach, that's great for him, because then he never has to fight to begin with. But it also scares off everybody else. And then it keeps perpetuating and becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy that nobody likes him, nobody wants to be his friend, because nobody's approaching him and nobody's nice to him. And it's like, well, yeah, you're kind of really scary to look at and be around. And why would somebody give that a chance? Because that doesn't typically mean somebody's a nice person.
Right.
So I think that this is just a really good insight to something that would have been more obvious without the last 3 books, but is actually pretty obvious when you really think about every interaction you've been seeing between Fitz and people who are not his friends and family.
Yeah. So she brings over this necklace and helps him put it on, goes behind him and fastens it at the nape of his neck. And she says, "Turn around, let me see." It makes him feel no different, really. But she turns around and says, "Oh yeah, that'll do." She kind of makes some professional remarks about how she should have made some things a little bit different based on his height and who he was, but I think it'll do. So if you're just going around town, wear your collar up like this. And if you need to charm somebody, find an excuse to loosen up your collar to show people.
Right. She's advising him not to show the whole thing unless he really needs it, because just showing a sliver is still going to have the effect, but it's more strong if his collar is open more.
She looked down into my face as she tugged my collar more open about the charm. I looked up at her and felt a sudden blush heat my face. Our eyes locked. "It works very well indeed," she observed, and unabashedly lowered her face to offer me her mouth. Not to kiss her was unthinkable. She pressed her mouth to mine. Her lips were warm. We sprang apart guiltily as the door handle rattled. The door scraped open and a woman's silhouette was outlined against the day's brightness. Then she came inside, pushing the door shut behind her. "Whew, it's cooler in here, thank Ida. Oh, beg pardon, were you doing a reading?" And this was clearly Jinna's niece. Fennel runs to greet her. "You love me best, you know you do, pick me up." And Jinna says, "Not a reading, testing a charm. It seems to work."
And then Jinna's niece picks up Fennel.
Yep.
But it's really funny. It's sort of odd to me that the charms also work on Jinna.
Why?
Because she made them. It feels like there should be some sort of immunity, but
obviously not.
No. But also, are we sure this isn't still sort of making people love him? Like it's not attracting a lover? Because I mean, everybody's definitely nicer going forward because of the charm. However, it seems, especially with the women, that they're like way more flirty and like interested.
If you are more open to someone instead of guarded against them, and Fitz is always remarked as like a relatively handsome guy.
That's true.
You feel more trusting and open to them. You're like, well, I can flirt.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. He seems nice. I don't know.
And Jinna already knows he's a nice guy.
True. And it does seem as though Jinna sort of likes him.
Yeah.
And Fitz clearly likes her back and is just awkward about it.
Remarked on the fact that she met him now twice or 3 times, and she had already made a charm for him to like help him out and be like, I hoped you'd visit.
Yeah, I think she just before now was sort of try to let him make the first move, but with the charm was emboldened to make the first move herself.
Yeah.
Which we love that. Yes, queens, make the first move.
Only takes some magic.
That's not true.
So Jinna's niece comes in and Fitz is like, oh, I should be going. There's errands I need to do as well for Lord Golden. And Jinna's niece immediately is like, must you go right away? She seemed genuinely disappointed at seeing me rise from my chair. There's plenty of fish if you'd care to stay to eat with us. Her impromptu invitation took me aback, as did the interest in her eyes. My fish. I'll eat it soon. Fennel leaned down to look at the food fondly. The charm seems to work very well indeed, Jinna observed in an aside, and I found myself tugging my collar near closed. I really must go, I'm afraid. I've work to do, and I'm expected back at the keep, but thank you for the invitation. Perhaps another time, then, the niece offered, and Jinna added, certainly another time, my dear. Before he leaves, let me introduce Tom Badgerlock. So Jinna says that this is Tom. His son is going to be coming, and we'll look after him for a little bit. And Tom will certainly have supper with us then. Tom Badgerlock, my niece, Miskya. Is that how you pronounced it? Miskya? Miskya?
I'm going to be so honest. This is one of the names where
you just skim.
I just like starts with an M. This is my niece. Nice to meet you. That's what I do in like any fantasy book where I don't know.
You see an apostrophe and you just breeze over.
I'm like, whatever. Sure.
So this is Miskya, Jinna's niece, and Fitz assures her that it's a pleasure, but also hurries out. And then he watches reactions of folk.
Yeah, now he's starting
through town
to realize, which I don't think is something that he's just doing because he has the charm on. I truly believe he has been watching everybody's reaction to him, if only because he's been waiting for somebody to recognize him.
But he does say, I usually looked aside from strangers on the street. A man unnoticed is a man unremembered, and that is the best that an assassin can hope for. And then I reminded myself I was no longer an assassin. And I think that's also what he keeps in mind from, like, we talked about how he's described with, like, canine descriptors often.
Yes.
And wolves look aside from people if they don't want to be aggressive.
Right.
So
and
I think that's also what he kind of does by habit.
Yeah, and I think that is sort of a thing, especially with somebody that looks the way Fitz does, that is inadvertently making him seem more dangerous and sketchy.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Like, no, I'm not trying to say that, like, if you don't make eye contact with strangers, you're a freak. I don't make eye contact with people I know. I might be outing myself there. But, like, I don't think that eye contact is a, like, end all be all. But I do think in society, eye contact is seen as a trait of trustworthiness, and that, like, if you meet people's eyes, people like just psychologically think that you are more trustworthy.
And that's what Fitz is saying here. He's like, I did notice more people smiling at me, but that could be because I was just meeting their eyes.
Yeah, he's like, I don't really meet people's eyes, so is this charm doing anything?
But either way, he plans on taking it off when he gets back to the keep.
Yes, and it is really funny to me because, like, he's like, well, I don't know if this is actually doing anything. And it's like, Fitz, you know that she has magic that works. You have seen it in action. Just because you're not, like...
Either way, he's uncomfortable with it, though.
But yes. Well, and it's honestly very sad how uncomfortable he is at having his first impression be likable. It's not even... People aren't even, like, looking at him and cheering and be like, oh, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're a celebrity, can I get to know you? They're just like smiling at him. And he's like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this.
I found that having strangers regard me benevolently for no reason was more unnerving than having them distrust me on sight.
That's a really sad sentence.
Yes.
Ugh, Fitz. It's okay for people to like you.
He gets back to Buckkeep, and now we have an interesting paragraph that I probably just breezed past on my first read through of these books ever because I didn't understand it, but it makes more sense rereading. I made my steep way up to the keep gate and was admitted by a guardsman there. The sun was high and the sky blue and clear, and if any of the passing folk were aware that the sole heir to the Farseer crown had vanished, they showed no sign of it. They moved about their ordinary tasks with no more than the concerns of a working day to vex them. By the stable, several tall boys had converged on a plump young man. I knew him for a dullard by his flat face and small ears, and the way his tongue peeped out of his mouth. Slow fear showed in his small eyes as the boys spread to encircle him. One of the older stable hands looked toward them irritably. No, no, no. I turned, seeking the source of the floating thought, but of course that availed me nothing. A faint snatch of music distracted me. A stable boy sent hurrying about his tasks jolted into me, then at my startled look begged my pardon most abjectly. Without thinking, I had allowed my hand to ride my sword hilt. No harm done, I assured him, and added, Tell me, where would I find the weapon master this time of day? Down at the practice courts, man. They're just past the new granary. As he's smiling, I thanked him and I turned away, tugs his collar closed, and we hear no more of the small boy getting surrounded, or the plump boy getting surrounded.
Yeah.
Because the no, no, no and the faint music is thick skilling, don't see me, go away.
Yes. And he's really powerful in it.
Yeah.
And of course, Fitz doesn't have his walls up because he hasn't done that in years, and the people that he was most afraid of hurting him are gone and dead. So
yeah, and he's trying to be skilling at this point, so
yes.
He's not focused on containing himself.
Exactly. And so it's really interesting to see that affect him. And I remember reading this and being a little confused because
like you'd think he would kind of...
Yeah, Fitz is so...
Yeah.
He's like so lawful good, right? Like he sees something going wrong and he's going to go try to help that because you shouldn't be bullying a kid. And especially not someone who looks like he needs more help than others. Like I feel as though it was odd to me that Fitz did not help and just turned away. And so in my mind, I was like, clearly that no is skilling of some kind. And it's probably from that kid. But then also maybe it was from one of the bullies. I was really confused. And the music, I just skipped. I was like, why does he keep talking about the stupid music? Because it's part of the skilling. So I don't know. It's really interesting just to have those little hints in there for the rereader to catch and pick up on. Mm-hmm. But that was thick.
That's thick. And that's the end of the chapter. He comes back. He's like, oh, I need to get rid of this scholar. People are too nice to me. And then I need to go fight somebody and find out about Prince Dutiful.
Yes. Yeah, there is that. I think that this chapter, I really like this chapter because it's
an insight into how he is perceived by the outside world, but also how he reacts to that.
Yes.
So it's kind of a dual perspective that we don't often get.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in these books, we're more focused on the plot and what's happening and how we're getting there. And then as this podcast is what it is, we do talk a little bit about the like little snippets we get outside of the plot and things that we can pick up. But I think this especially is a really good chapter to look at who Fitz is and sort of how he has been shaped by what has happened to him. And honestly, how sad that is because of how poorly and negatively it has affected him in general.
Right.
And so, I don't know. I really like it for that reason. I feel like this is ultimately a sad chapter in my mind. It's just sad in a way that isn't normal. Like normally a sad chapter is something where somebody dies or like something overtly bad has happened. I think this is more sad. Like I feel so much pity for Fitz throughout this whole chapter because of how much damage I'm seeing.
Yeah. Oh man. But that's the end of that chapter.
So what do you think? Is Fitz happy?
No, he's not. But everyone who looks at him is.
Yeah, that's true. I think Fitz is like, no, I was going to say, I feel like he's not like that unhappy, but he's definitely not happy.
No, I don't think he spends a lot of time thinking about his happiness. I think he's just reassured about Hap. He's kind of getting things straightened out. He's excited about the prospect of diving back into all of these plots and things, but at the same time, very aware that he hates doing it.
Yeah. Honestly, we should rename this podcast to Is Fitz Anxious?
Yeah.
Because that answer is yes more often.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week. Please let us know if you think Fitz is happy or anxious. You can email us at isfitzhappy@gmail.com, or you can message us on any social medias or comment on any of our posts on social media. You can find us at Facebook, on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, YouTube, Reddit. We're at isfitzhappy at all of those.
We look forward to hearing from you. Okay, so now we get to get into the good stuff and talk about what you guys brought to our attention.
And since we missed a full week here, we got quite a bit to speak on.
Yes.
And we're going to do it by platform, I think, instead of topic. So forgive us for jumping around.
Yes, I'm sure things will be retread.
Yeah.
We never know what we're doing here. We just are here for a good time.
Yeah. So first off, we have a comment on YouTube from Theomix from about 2 weeks ago-ish. It was from episode 255, chapter 7 of this book, Heart of a Wolf. That's when we were speaking about Molly a bit more. And Theomix's comment is about our topic on Molly and that Tumblr post that you found on Molly and that was brought up to us and things like that. So this person says that they definitely agree with some of the points about Molly from the Tumblr post and that Tumblr user brought up. And I often felt that she refused to see how things are for Fitz, a massive red flag. Of course, we're only seeing one point of view, so there's a lot we're not privy to. I think Fitz was more in love with the idea. She never treated him like a royal or bastard at first, which he put too much emphasis on, instead of if they really were a good fit. Not once does she ever even take a hint of danger or ill will serious when he does give any hint. He certainly made a ton of mistakes, though, but I think overall it was toxic between them. Years later, of course, that changes, and it was a beautiful read in the later books, and I was happy for that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that there were mistakes on both sides and that they were toxic as a younger couple. And I think, we didn't really touch on it at that point, I don't think. But I agree that Molly does not take it seriously when Fitz says that there is danger being with him and that he has to face a lot of danger. I guess I usually don't feel as bad about that, though, because he's lied to her so much and has kept so much from her that it feels...
She doesn't have context.
Yeah, like she's just a normal person. And in fact, she's... I don't want to say less than. She's a servant, so she's even like lower in the knowledge pool than like a lower lady of the court would be.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have the context of how the court works, how royal court works to understand real dangers that are there. And honestly,
I mean, Fitz grew up in it and he had to have it, told to him over and over, like, no, you can't just run away. Somebody will find a use for you because you were a discarded royal bastard. We need to keep you here.
Yes. And I think, honestly, part of why they do better later is probably because Burek was able to explain to Molly that, yes, there were dangers. Like, there's no way they didn't talk about what Molly knew. And I don't think Burek would have given away all the secrets of Fitz.
Right.
But I think he would have, at the very least, been like, yeah, he was telling the truth. There are a lot of dangers. And she experienced firsthand Regal's armies coming after her because they found out she was pregnant.
Yeah.
Or just knew that she was important to Fitz. I don't think they knew she was pregnant. But she was put in danger. And I think that helps with their later relationship of her knowing that there was actually a lot happening to him and he was a kid and didn't know what to do. I think that helps bridge the sort of forgiveness that later comes. But it wasn't fair of her to just assume that there is no danger and he's, trying to make himself look cooler or whatever.
But from what I remember in our discussion, that Tumblr post is still very, I think, an unfair reading of Molly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do agree with your comment, Theomix, that there were things there that weren't, entirely kosher.
Yes. And I wouldn't know anything about being unfair to a character. I would never let my bias show. Kidding. I think at least once a month we get a comment with, I think Eva's being unfair to insert whatever character I just went on a rant about, which is always valid and probably very true. So thank you to Theomix for writing in. Then we have a couple comments on Facebook on episode 259, which was last episode that got posted. So that's chapter 11, Chade's Tower. So Fitz coming back into Buckkeep.
First is kind of a little bit of a lighthearted one from Rodney. And there's a couple things in Rodney's post here. One is that it's a discussion about Chade losing his mental faculties, which, isn't that lighthearted, but bear with me, guys. It does get a little bit more lighthearted in this. And that comment is very, very sad. And Rodney thought so too. That it's just like, it's kind of a bummer to read that, like, oh no, Chade is losing his memory and things like that. But even before he starts developing his skill, he seemed pretty on the ball, Rodney writes. From what I remember, it's been a while since I did a reread. Maybe it's the herbs he's taking, but I think all this stuff about him losing his edge has more to do with his and Fitz's anxieties than anything else. At this point, Rodney's talking about. Because Fitz was worried about that. He's like, oh no, Chade isn't all that he was, all that I remember. And Rodney's saying that maybe it's a little bit overblown now, but it does get worse as it goes on. But right now, maybe it's just overblown. And that could be true. And I think it is partially Fitz kind of putting a pedestal around Chade and saying Chade has like an iron box for a mind. He doesn't lose anything. He's the smartest man alive. And realizing coming back as an adult that, oh, Chade is just another human adult. So it could be a little bit of that, but also Chade is getting older and I think he is kind of slipping slightly. And we see just the bare beginnings and foreshadowings of what comes later in the trilogy. So I think it's a little bit of both, and Fitz is overblowing it at this point, but it is the start of the slope downwards before he gets skill helped, I guess. I don't know if he's fully healed by the skill magics for his mind, but at least the skill helps him later.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of people writing in about whether or not, or a lot of comments about Chade's faculties. And I think I believe that it is something that is affecting him that is healed with the skill.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good call out. I guess we can still look to make sure that that's what's happening, but I feel pretty confident if we've had more than one person comment in about it. And yeah.
But the last part that is a little bit more lighthearted is a grammar question. And I am smiling as I'm asking this of you because Rodney asks, is it Fitz's as in F-I-T-Z apostrophe, Fitz's as in F-I-T-Z apostrophe S, or Fitz's as in F-I-T-Z-E-S? And this is the possessive asking. Rodney says, I should know this, ... And then Bastian's replies to that and says, I always use the F-I-T-Z apostrophe, but now I'm wondering if that's correct. Hopefully Emma knows.
Yeah. I definitely didn't even need to Google this. But no, my knee-jerk reaction is always to put apostrophe S with a Z, but I did do some research and it is sort of one of those like gray areas where you can do either, but people usually go by if the Z in a word, like a noun specifically, sounds like an S, at the end, then you should treat it as though it is an S. Although if you're trying to pluralize and you need to pluralize with that extra S sound, then it needs to have the apostrophe S. So like Fitz's
anxieties. Fitz's anxieties would be apostrophe S.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm not your English teacher. You do it and I'll know what you mean.
The ES at the end, I know, is for multiple. Like if there are multiple illegitimately born people named Fitz, be like, oh, all of the Fitzes over there.
Yeah, that'd be ES.
That would be ES.
So definitely not the ES, but I think the apostrophe versus apostrophe S at the end of Fitz to make Fitz like it's Fitz's problem, Fitz's anxiety. It's
for the possessive. Yeah.
I don't know. And to be honest, it's probably really different from American English to British English or whatever, because we have slight differences like that where like here in America, we're like, yeah, chill. But over in England and Australia, they're probably like, no, there's a definite answer. So I don't know.
I know for me with Fitz, it's something that ends with a Z. I'm almost always going to put apostrophe S at the end. If it ends with an S, I will just put the apostrophe. That's just like kind of my personal rule of thumb. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but
I also read if you have two S's, you're also supposed to put apostrophe S because
that's crazy. 3 S's in a row.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think that's true. So
like mistresses is
yeah, I don't.
That's weird.
Yeah, whatever.
I don't know.
So who knows? I would say stay in school, kids. Grammar is definitely very important. You know,
not a forte of you.
Yeah, it's a running joke in our house that Luke does all the grammatical and spelling checks because I can't. And I'm the one with the degree in it. So, you know, it's just like Jinna says. Everybody has different talents, and I'll never be able to be talented in grammar. But I can do magic, so
yeah, just stick to that. We also had a comment from Ellen on this episode, the same one, and it's about the piebalds calling themselves the Cult of the Bastard, or being called the Cult of the Bastard. Ellen asks, do you remember if that comes up more further on? I wonder what Chade thought when he heard of the Cult of the Bastard. Did he think Fitz was behind it? That he started his own little court? Did he wonder about that? Is he still wondering and fishing for how much Fitz is involved when they speak in the tower? Was the visit to the cabin fishing for that as well? And Bastion replies to this, saying that Bastion does not recall Fitz and Chade calling piebalds the Cult of the Bastard ever again, but there is an epigraph sometime later in this trilogy talking about that.
Right. And I just want to say, I don't think Chade came to Fitz to ask about the Cult of the Bastard. Like, no. I don't think he was fishing at the cabin for it. I do, however, fully believe that Chade is wondering, now that the prince is missing, if that has something to do with Fitz, if he is secretly doing that. But I don't think it's a serious worry. I think it's he's been trained to look at everything from all angles and has to take that as a possibility.
And I think I mentioned it in the episode, but I think Chade is believing, hey, he is witted. He is the only witted one I know. They must have a community. What does Fitz know that he hasn't told me? What's his reaction to them being called Cult of the Bastard? He has to know something about this because I need him to know something about this to help me find Dutiful.
Right. And honestly, it may have been made worse by the fact that there is that bard who sings the song about Fitz living. Yes. And I don't know if Chade was there for that song and where that plays in the part of him coming to visit Fitz versus going back. Because we know during Springfest, he visits Fitz. I don't know where that performance falls, where his visit to Fitz falls. Yeah. I don't know if that could also play a part in thinking, oh, this is the Bastard's cult. But I would assume that if he had feelings that maybe Fitz was behind this, he would have pressed more on that when he was there, but he didn't. Fitz only learns about that event through Starling. So I don't know. I agree. I think it's more of he thinks that Fitz knows more than he's telling, because there's no way a group of people with a magic would stay separate in his mind.
Yeah.
Because it's such a good strength and blah, blah, blah.
So Bastian says that the epigraph of the first chapter of Golden Fool kind of talks about it a little bit, and that's the only thing that Bastian can recall it being brought up again. And says that the Piebalds always claimed, it says the Piebalds always claimed only to want freedom from persecution. That has been a lot of the witted folk of the Six Duchies. But that claim can be dismissed as both a lie and a clever deceit, because the Piebalds always wanted power. Their intent was to mold all of the witted folk of the Six Duchies into a united force that would rise up and seize control of the monarchy and put their own people into power. One facet of their ploy was to claim that all kings since the abdication of chivalry were pretenders, that the bastardy of Fitz Chivalry Farseer was wrongly construed as an obstacle to his inheriting the throne. Legends of the true-hearted bastard rising from the grave to serve King Verdi in his quest proliferated beyond all common sense, ascribing powers to Fitz Chivalry that raised the bastard to the status of a near deity. For this reason, the Piebalds have also been known as the cult of the bastard. So it's not claiming that the Piebalds have claimed that title, but the Piebalds are also known as the cult of the bastard because they are using Fitz's name in order to say all of the other people in the monarchy are false. They tore Fitz down because he was witted and claimed it was because he was a bastard. But he was truly supposed to, help the monarchy and everything. We should rise up against the current powers and tear them down because they are the pretenders. That's what this epigraph is saying.
And I believe that. I mean, it's hard to tell too, because it is somebody writing on the Piebald group. And so there's also the fact that could be biased towards what they actually believed and ascribing more malice than there was. But also we know there is a subsect of the group that is malicious and does want power.
Yeah. And again, it's writing from the perspective of, they're using this cult of the bastard title and Fitz's legend as a ploy to gain support.
Yes.
To gain their own power.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think they're such an interesting cult, and it's such an interesting thing to bring in, to have this sort of group that in some ways is Fitz's fault, in that it's not his fault. I shouldn't say that.
I know what you mean. It's
but
just funny to hear.
In a way, who Fitz is and all his fears of, because him being found out as being witted and is going to be used against him in some way. And then here in a really big way it is, because these people are using it as justification to take over his family's throne.
Right.
But
so thank you, Bastian, for providing context to that. And thank you, Ellen, for the question about it.
Yes. And then Bastian also had some questions and things to let us know about, I guess. One of which is that Carrie did die during the war.
Yes, I looked this up after the episode as well. Carrie was one of the forged ones that Fitz identified after Queen Ketrikin's hunt.
Yes.
To go out and kill a bunch of the forged ones around them.
And just a reminder as to why this is relevant is because Fitz saw Carrie's whittle marks in the table at the tavern. And he was a puppeteer, or he was going to be a puppeteer until he was caught up in, the forging and everything else.
So thank you again for the context surrounding that, Bastian. That was very good.
Also, Bastian gives more context about scrying. That Chade does try to let Fitz scry, but they believe it's the only time he actually does this is when Fitz is still wolfish and right after his resurrection. And he uses a quote from the book where Chade clarifies just water then to Burek, who, as we know, is from Chalced, and as we just learned last chapter, Chalced is apparently where scrying is big. So Chade is deferring to Burek on how to do this. but then says, Burek saying, have you made him scry before?
Yeah, go ahead.
And,
what can it hurt? Like, we're trying everything we can
to get him to come back to himself.
Yeah.
And Chade says, I never tried him. I always suspected he could if he tried. He has the wit and the skill. Why shouldn't he be able to scry as well? And that's from the first chapter of Assassin's Quest.
Yeah, so it never really pops up, but it's something that we all inferred as readers, but I don't think Fitz ever talked about, because this is about the conversation of Fitz seeing the little basin and being like, oh, on my travels, I noticed these as well. Maybe Chade knew about things not from a messenger, but from him scrying.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, duh.
Yeah, obviously.
So maybe it's one of those things where just Fitz never really put it together and it never really came up, but we were kind of like, duh, Chade knows how to do this.
Right. And I mean, also this sort of knowing could come because we know we're rereading.
Yeah.
We've like already read the book series. So I think that's one of my least favorite aspects of rereading books is it's really hard to remember what you're supposed to know when. And so sometimes I get mad at people for not understanding the pattern that's clearly forming when like I only have such a clear vision of the pattern because I know the pattern as a whole.
Yeah.
So like that's my main beef with rereading. But no, I think that's really important though to know that it was something that was talked about in front of Fitz, but Fitz wasn't fully there when it was happening. So we'll give him grace for not remembering that he has direct knowledge that Chade does scry.
We also had a couple people chime in about a couple topics, and Bastion is one of those as well. First off is Arkan Bloodblade being Eliana's father, but not accompanying her. And the other one was Lady Time's room. So Bastion chimes in saying that Peter, who is Peter Blackwater, is the uncle of Eliana. And despite being Eliana's father, Arkan was not very involved in the plots surrounding the clan, the Narwhal clan, because it's all, as another person mentions, it's all matriarchal society there. So him being the father doesn't really matter that much when Peter is the mother's brother. That's the important part.
That's the important relation.
And Peter and Arkan are old friends. So Arkan is trying to help Peter out in the clan, but Arkan also wants trade with the Six Duchies. So it just kind of all fits together that way.
And the Boar clan is what Arkan is part of.
Yes, and they don't really have arable land, so they need the trade.
Yes, and it's different than the Narwhal clan because, again, it's matriarchal, so he would be part of his mother's clan.
Yes.
And Eliana is part of her mother's clan, and so is her uncle, because they're related on that side. Yeah, so that's like a good distinction and good reminder of where everybody falls on this sort of weird family tree.
And what their culture is like, because I had forgotten that, so it's a good reminder there.
Yes. Bastion also says that he doesn't believe that this is Lady Time's room that Lord Golden is staying in, because they're fairly certain that Chade has left Lady Time's room in a very similar condition over the years, with rumors that her ghost is still dwelling there. In the final trilogy, Beloved and Spark steal a bunch of clothes from Time's old room to keep warm on this adventure. So I think...
And somebody else does write in and gives a little bit more context from the books on this, but I believe you are correct, Bastion, that it is not.
It is not Lady Time's.
Lord Golden's current rooms are not Lady Time's old rooms.
Right. And then, the last question... again, I asked the question on this episode to everybody if anybody thinks that Chade is actually, losing facility or not, mental capability.
And Rodney already chimed in saying that I think it's a little overblown and it's probably not as much. So Bastion has their own take.
Yeah. I'm fairly certain Chade is losing his wits due to his old age at this point. In the next book, when we spend more time with Chade, there are more instances of him being forgetful, forgetting things Fitz told him already, or insisting that he told Fitz things he doesn't know yet. I think Chade is getting defensive about it now because he's already drawn the conclusion that his mind is slipping, and he's ashamed of it and tries to deny it himself. Chade's memory problems getting alleviated after Fitz Fitz's skill healing. After that point, he figures out how to use Thick's skill to help him heal himself and alleviate a lot of his old age pains. And then they get in that whole argument about Chade using so much of the healing, which I do definitely remember Chade being upset about the healing.
And Chade thinking Fitz is gatekeeping healing from him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Fitz is mad because he feels as though that's not what he should be doing. But honestly, this is basically what Kettle did with, right? Or this is what they used to do in the coterie, is like keep themselves mentally young and physically young for longer with the skill.
Not use somebody else's skill to do it.
No. And that's a whole other can of worms that we will open when we get to it, because I could go on and on.
But Bastion has taken the other stance than Rodney did, is that Chade's faculties are slipping right now. He is kind of losing things, and it's more evident later.
Yeah.
What side do you fall on, you think?
I think it makes sense that there is some aging happening. I feel like it's kind of weird how much is slipping and he's losing so quickly, it seems, but also that could be due to the narrator that we have, and it's not necessarily all at once. It has been happening slowly over time. It just seems all at once because that's when Fitz is noticing it.
Chade is at least like 75 now.
Yeah, but also that's not that old. Like,
no, but when your brother dies from a disease and magic, but like also Shrewd was sick at like 50 something or 50, and you're the older half brother.
Yeah, like there's definitely some like familial traits happening that like lean into it could be something that happened. And I guess like I have a great grandparent that suffered from dementia at 70. Like it was really young for somebody to like start having that sort of thing happen. So it's possible. It just feel like I'm over here like 75 is young.
I'm kind of with you though. I'm straddling the best of both worlds. I'm typical fence sitter here, taking like, oh, it's both, because I think he is losing some memories and forgetting some things. Like he's writing things down in a book instead of just remembering them now. Things like that. But also I think Fitz is looking too far into it right now.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, he's losing his mind.
I think it wouldn't be so bad if Fitz had stayed around Chade for the last 10 years. I think it's more obvious to him because his memory of Chade was Chade being so smart and on top of everything, and also clouded by the fact that he was a child and Chade was an adult, and so there's that sort of dynamic at play as well.
So I think it's that the narration that we're getting makes it seem so overblown, but I think it is happening.
And I do feel like one of the reasons that it doesn't continue to happen is because of that skill healing. I just totally forgot about that being a big aspect. I thought it was all because he like fixes the scars on his face and a lot of aches and pains. And so I remember that conversation between Fitz and Chade of like, hey, that's not necessary. You shouldn't be using the skill like that. And so I guess it makes sense that he would also be doing that internally in ways that we can't exactly see. Yeah. But he does end up still having memory problems later on in the final trilogy. So
I mean, he's over 110 at that point.
I mean, yeah. So whether or not that's like he's just pushing the problem off, or maybe it is starting now, I'm still open to having my opinion formed as we go on.
Yeah. The last thing that Bastion had in here was a little aside that they were going to write in about their theory about how the Rainwild River is skill and that's why it's corrosive, but going to save that for the next trilogy or the next quadrilogy when we get to that point when they're walking through the river. But that prompted a question from Cookie Baker and saying like, I'm wondering kind of what your theory is, Bastion, because I think them kind of going crazy walking along the Rainwild River is from the buried Elderling cities, and because of the cataclysm going on and all the death, those kind of bad memories are surfacing and making people kind of go crazy, and that's why there are madness seasons that the Rainwilders mention.
Yeah.
That's also an interesting theory about that.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's definitely...
It's such a weird region of the world.
It makes me mad. But I don't know. Maybe it's like Luke said. Maybe it's a magic spot. We don't need to know.
You hate that answer, though.
I hate that answer so much. There's got to be a reason.
That's why it's fun to have theories.
I know.
But Bastion, yeah, we're looking forward to hearing your theory on that in the next series.
Yeah. And I like the idea of like putting it off till we're back in that area so we can discover more. It's so hard, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. That's it for Facebook. So thank you everyone who commented on those threads.
We also got quite a few emails in. We'll start first with the email from Tano.
Yeah.
And they wrote in to talk about Fitz and Beloved.
Yeah, specifically kind of their relationship.
Yes.
And how they read Fitz. And eventually the confrontation that Fitz and Beloved have later in this trilogy. So this is kind of stuff that we'll get to, but it kind of relates to how their relationship is building up now.
Right. And so basically, Tano talks about how they, like me, had a hard time reading Fitz as fully heterosexual, that it just especially the first time through, feels as though Fitz is definitely bi at the very least.
Also understands that Robin Hobb didn't intend that,
yes.
She says, but doesn't understand why then Fitz is describing the fool in the beginning of this book as like so beautiful and all that stuff. So
yeah, it like...
just to them, it felt, like not heteronormative.
Yeah, and like a purposeful choice. And then Robin Hobb later says that not the intention, that sort of they're just friends. But they go on to say they think that I'm sometimes a little harsh on Fitz, especially regarding his interactions with Beloved. Valid and fair. And the reasoning is Beloved is like 15 to 20 years older than Fitz, around 50 to 55.
Which, as a quick aside, that is the minimum amount that Beloved is older than Fitz, by the way. Beloved could be a lot older than that.
We're never sure about Fitz.
The only thing that we know is Beloved's comment of, I am your and your wolf's age, at least. So at least 17 years older than Fitz.
Right. I mean, they had a whole childhood outside of Claris and then another basic childhood in Claris. So.
And then a whole adventure to get to Buck. Yeah. Anyways.
So who knows? Anyway, so Beloved's like 15 to 20 years older than Fitz, so around 50 to 55. So I felt Beloved should have shown more patience and understanding given Fitz's relative youth. B's story also makes it clear that whites mature and intellectually in line with their chronological age, though they may look younger. But I felt like Beloved acts more like a teenager throughout the entire series than a 55-plus-year-old. Like, B felt way more mature than Beloved, and she was like 11. If B seems more mature mentally than her chronological age.
Yeah, then like, why is the fool acting like that? So
it was sort of... They go on to say, I was also frustrated that Beloved didn't recognize how dangerous the rumors about them being lovers were for Fitz. Beloved should have quashed those rumors regardless of their truth. Fitz had already been attacked by a guardsman at that point and has a deep fear of being beaten to death by a mob after his time in the dungeons and being witted. I thought this was really insensitive of Beloved not to realize, and this is not something I would do to someone 2 decades younger than me and who might still be figuring out their own sexuality. Fitz was in a much more vulnerable position than Lord Golden too, and grieving the loss of Night Eyes. But instead of being understanding about the fact that his friend had recently been physically attacked, probably has PTSD and just lost a loved one, Beloved makes a huge drama of it and stops speaking to Fitz at the exact time when Fitz could really use a friend to comfort him. Not to mention, Beloved was often asking Fitz for help or favors, while Fitz hardly asks him for anything ever. And that is sort of the opinion of the relationship.
Yeah. And again, those things kind of happen further along than we are in the story right now, but it is a very strong... that basis is very important to understand before we get to those events, the basis of the relationship.
Yeah, I think it is really hard to remember that Beloved is so much older than Fitz.
Yeah. The only thing against this, before you jump into that, the only thing against this that I'll say is I remember Beloved just saying in the beginning of this book that pretty much all last trilogy, they were going through their own adolescence and having a lot of feelings and like probably hormones and stuff. And they were appalled at how they acted. So there is something different that we don't know biologically about how they age.
Yes, I think, yeah, that's a really good point. I think also B is kind of a hard person to be our touchstone of how whites age, mature mentally, because Beloved was given a loving family to start off with for however many years of childhood where they loved and celebrated Beloved and their differences and like let them be a child and be normal.
Yeah.
Whereas B has a father who is grieving the death of his wife and sort of
and the child can't bear being touched by the father.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing. I feel like B is so different just if you just look at how they're raised. And I don't want to be unfair to Fitz, but he is really neglectful to be. And so I feel like a lot of times you see that sort of trauma becoming a more mature child. And I don't think that's necessarily saying that B isn't mature for her age or whatever, but I do think some of that maturity is stemming from more of trauma than it is of her actually being more mature. Yeah. And so I don't think it's fair to say that then all whites mature quicker than their age. I think that's a B thing based off B's life. And also we don't know if B as a teenager is going to look the same as a normal teenager, what that means. So yeah, I think
it's hard to say that way, but I do agree with your main point though, of Beloved being very insensitive to Fitz's feelings kind of uncharacteristically, but at the same time, we know that Fitz makes very insensitive comments and remarks and like insinuations and doesn't trust Beloved's comments back about the situation.
Right.
So like it's a very tough situation in general.
Yeah.
Tough argument to have. But with Beloved's age, I don't know. It does seem like their relationship is hard to gauge because Beloved is all worried of like, oh, I'm asking way too much of Fitz. I love him and we're friends and I know he's friends with me and seems to trust me, but I have to ask him to do all of these things and put him in danger and I hate that. And then Fitz will make a comment that he doesn't really... It's like an offhanded comment, and then Beloved is like, oh, perfect, you restored my faith in the White Prophet and the Catalyst, and we are doing the right thing. So it feels very like Fitz agreeing to things that he doesn't quite understand.
Yeah, I don't know. Their relationship's really hard, because again, I'm a fan. I think that they do have some sort of romantic relationship subtext. Yeah, like I feel like there's something to that isn't fully explored, and I understand Robin Hobb has said that like that was not the intention. However, the way it's written to me doesn't feel, like you said, heterosexual, and so I think I do also read into that part of it. And so I think with this situation, it's hard to know, again, since we haven't gotten there yet. I'm wondering if part of that aligns with him realizing he has to die. Like Lord Golden's like, I have to die soon. I need to distance from Fitz. This is a perfect wedge to put in, and not really thinking of Fitz as the friend. Beloved is more thinking of Fitz as the catalyst that needs to be forced into the correct way. And so how much of that interaction is purposefully pushing Fitz away to get Fitz to be okay with Lord Golden dying?
And that's also a hard thing that we don't think about often either, is the balance between Beloved and the White Prophet that he has to make with his relationships.
And so I think that's an aspect of it as well. I'm not saying that excuses how all of that goes down or what happens, and maybe it isn't even close to when any of that would make sense for that to be a reason. But I think there is sort of like, as much as they do have a relationship with each other, whatever that is to them, there are these other layers of the Catalyst and Prophet, of Fool and Fitz, of Lord Golden and Tom Badgerlock. Like, there's so many layers and there's so many different things. And they're at a point in their life where so many of those things are clashing together that it makes sense that as the older person, seeing a way to push this in the way you want it to go, as cynically as that sounds, you are going to lean on that because you know your friend isn't going to take it well.
Right.
But so I don't know. Like,
yeah. Thank you, Tano, for bringing up this conversation. I think we'll have it again, obviously, when we get to those sections.
yes.
But yeah, it's really hard to kind of balance, for us even, to juggle all of those relationships that they have, let alone them to do it. So
yes. Yeah. And yeah, I'm absolutely too harsh on Fitz. But yeah, it comes with Lisa Love. That makes it okay. You can
yeah, right.
But thank you so much for bringing it up and giving us a chance to look at more angles and to really think about what everyone's standing to lose, especially with Fitz and his trauma and what's going on when a lot of things come to a head.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also really important and something that we'll have to try to remember to think on when we're discussing the topic going forward. Thank you.
So we also got an email from Simon, and Simon wrote in to talk about Lady Time's rooms. And this is the more context I was saying before, because Simon writes in and says that in the final trilogy, Fitz takes the Fool into Chade's rooms through Lady Time's old apartment, forcing his way through the wardrobe, which Ash later ransacks. So it's adjacent to Chade's room, which is above Fitz's childhood one. But Lord Bright has Lady Time's former rooms when he first arrives in Buckkeep, when Chade is scared they might be overheard, so they can't be that bad / out of the way, assuming Regal put him there in the way he uses rooms to mock the coastal dukes. So they must be higher up and more central rather than out in the West Wing or wherever Lord Golden's current rooms are.
Right.
So most likely not Lady Time's rooms.
Yeah, and I think that does make sense too, just because Lady Time has to be somebody who's important enough to get to go to things that Chade needs to be able to go to.
Yeah.
And important enough to be left alone and be cranky and not be kicked out of the castle.
Yeah. So thank you, Simon.
Yeah.
We also had an email from Juanis. Thank you very much for the correction on the pronunciation. Again, hope I said it right this time with the pronunciation change. Juanis says it's a longtime listener and have always wanted to write in, but they were late for the first trilogy and want to just kind of wait to have something to say. So appreciate you chiming in with a couple thoughts here. So there's a few different musings here and they break it up. So Juanis first says that we had an extensive discussion on Fitz not confirming his identity with Black Rolf. And we've talked a lot about this in the past and had conversations about why that was. But Juanis brings a different perspective, saying there's also probably a reason because it shuts it down if he just flat out denies it. Because if he says, no, I'm not him, Black Rolf has two options. One, to believe him, or the second, to be like, no, you're lying, but you can't really do anything against the face of someone just saying, no, I'm not.
Yeah, somebody flat out lying to your face. Even if you know for a fact somebody's flat out lying to your face, if it's a low stake lie, you're not going to push it.
Yeah, it just ends there, really.
It's an awkward sort of faux pas to continue to push.
But if he said, yeah, I am, that opens up so many more questions. So this way, Fitz can just kind of shut down the whole conversation and it's done.
Right. And there's no questions to be added, which I thought was really fitting that it fits in with this episode, because we talked a lot about Fitz believing that all conversations are just people digging for information. So I do sort of like the idea that he just feels he'll just be a liar then and lie even if he knows that they know, because then they can't get any more information.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
The second point was our discussion on the skill and wit as genetic magics being passed down, whether it was recessive or dominant. And we mentioned in there that we're not, full-on scientists.
Yeah.
The last biology class I had was probably in high school 15, 20 years ago.
Not to spoil it for our listeners, but we don't do science.
But Juana says, as someone who professionally works on effects of certain genes on embryonic development, I hope to have some insight at least. It is likely not just one gene that controls either magic. Whereas there might be some genes more important than others, I think it unlikely that just having one certain gene, either dominant or recessive, would give you either magic. It seems to me more likely to be a combination of genes. Some evidence for this is the very different ways in which these magics express themselves in the ones that have it. And Juanis brings up strength being one of those things. Some people are more strong in the skill or more strong in the wit or less so in either of them. And that's not a measure of how hard you train, but it just seems to be what you're born with. So that would indicate there has to be a multitude of genes, one or multiple for getting it, and some other modifying strength.
Right. So it makes sense that it's much more complicated than just like eye color or hair color.
You don't. And it also brings into question, or not question, but brings into light the theory of mixing bloodlines, because then it could be a mixture of multiple different genes, and it doesn't always create witted people. Like Hap isn't, or skilled people. Hap isn't skilled.
Right. And
he could have potentially been a Raider-born child.
Which means he has coastal Buckkeep blood and Out Island blood in him and still doesn't have skill. I don't know if we know if he's fully cut off from the skill. He might have the capacity to be affected by it.
Yeah, I don't think he's fully cut off.
But we know that he does not have skill in a way that allows him to use it.
Right.
So I think that's really interesting. Because it is especially coastal duchies with the islands that seem to make it more evident or more likely that you will have skill.
Yeah. So yeah, it is just kind of like a combination of things. And once again, thank you for bringing some of your expertise to our discussions on fantasy stuff, because it makes it so much more grounded and interesting to me.
Yeah, honestly, it's like really crazy how often we just like throw out a crackpot theory and then somebody's like, I'm actually an expert in this field and here's what I think. And I love it every time it happens. Please continue to do that.
Yeah.
And I love it, but it's so interesting to me how many people are like, actually, like, first of all, kind enough to be willing to dumb down their extremely cool knowledge to my level. I can
with
understand
examples.
Yeah, to be like, okay, here's what this means. So much love that. And then also that like you're willing to like think about a fake scenario in depth in your knowledge set. It's just so fun, and I just love like that aspect of our podcast. And so sorry, I just wanted to gush that this is like so fun every time it happens, and somebody, whatever your skill set is, I love that we all like bring it together. We're like, let's make it real.
And then the last thing Juana says is, in the discussion on why Chade shares some of his thoughts with Fitz, or so much more of his thoughts with Fitz, and whether it is because Fitz has grown or he has Chade has less loyalty to Kettrikin because she's not a Farseer. Juana's always thought neither of those. Just that Chade is fully pushing his own agenda, and he knows the Queen respects Fitz and will respect his opinions. So if Chade can pre-plant some ideas in Fitz's mind, he has an ally in convincing Kettrikin of Chade's ways. Maybe I'm not giving Chade enough credit, but I always assumed that he was manipulating Fitz into siding with him. And actually, I think you're giving him just the right amount of credit. That is something that he could possibly do and think of, because Chade is always thinking of Buckkeep and securing the Farseer throne and furthering that ideal.
Yeah.
And if that's the best way he can see to lead, he's going to use all the tools he has at his disposal. So I think that is a really, really cool theory as well.
Also, just to like add a cynical side to it, Chade probably at this point is pretty certain that Fitz is the biological father of Dutiful. And so maybe it's a little bit of like, if I get the dad on board, the mom will follow suit.
I think he has an idea of it. Yeah, for sure.
But I like that idea. I like the idea that it's not really anything to do with Kettrikin's ability to lead or Fitz being grown up enough to handle it. It's more like, I have something that I need to get done, and maybe this will help in his little like spidery ways.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a very, very interesting angle to that conversation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for that perspective. And then we also got a couple emails from Dagenhart.
And one of them is once again on the topic of castles and palaces. Buckkeep is a keep/castle, and palaces are more just decorative. So
yes, that's the difference between the two. And you win. I'm going to do it anyway, but you win. So fun. Thank you for continuing our little soft competition here. Also writing in again to give us the context that it is the uncle, not the father, that brings Eliana.
Yeah, for Out Island because of the matriarchal society.
Yes. And then finally talks about how Dagenhart was the one who had the question about Fitz's capitalistic viewpoint.
Yes.
And we did interpret the question correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's kind of like his transactional nature, Fitz's which we've brought up in this episode too. Yeah.
And now does say that they do realize that it is probably more to do with the low self-esteem and the sort of way that he was raised rather than Hobb's feelings towards capitalism.
Yeah, but Dagenhart does say that initially they were thinking that Fitz wasn't raised that way, but it does acknowledge that maybe the shrewd deal kind of got to him like that, but as a not really recognized prince, but like a bastard of the royal family, Fitz was just given food and clothing and all these things and privileges. Yeah. So he wasn't really raised to feel like it should be transactional. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Dagenhart, that shrewd's deal and Chade kind of pounding it in like, hey, you are serving the royal family all the time is why Fitz feels that way in a lot of ways, or at least was the basis for why he feels that way now, because you are doing this and you are fed and clothed because you are helping the royal family. And if you stop being useful, someone will kill you.
Yeah.
That was kind of
whether
how
or not
he
it's
was
me,
raised.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
But be useful or else.
Yeah, because if you run away, you will be used by someone else. You need to be loyal.
Yeah, so sad.
It's a sad way to be raised, but I think that was kind of the foundation of his feelings that way. And then we've discussed ad nauseum of how he's grown up and how the world has reacted to him and things that have happened to him that have kind of pounded that into him, and his distrust and his lack of self-worth.
Exactly.
Kind of just enhance that.
Yeah. So thank you, Dagenhart, for writing in. And thank you to everybody who reaches out. We love hearing from you and getting your points of view, whether that's to rib us about castles versus keep or to give us really cool scientific explanations for why something might be the way that it is. We love all genres of communication with you guys, and we love to get to see what we get next week. So we're looking forward to see what else you guys have to say.